This is Bullets with AWR Hawkins, a Breitbart.com podcast. Here he is, the host of the podcast, AWR Hawkins.
Welcome to Bullets with AWR Hawkins, a Breitbart News podcast focused on guns, gun rights, the Second Amendment. We sum these things up here under the banner of freedom, always have, always will, and that's because an armed citizen is a free citizen. Simple as that. When the law-abiding citizen is not armed, he or she is just a target. Whether the criminal is armed with a gun or a knife or a shovel or a hammer, doesn't matter. Once the vulnerable lack arms, they do not become less vulnerable, only more so. You don't believe me? Go to London where they're stabbing people left and right. Just stab them. No one can fight back. Go to our schools where teachers and principals and staff members are under assault, where they're literally getting shot in the schools. Why? They can't shoot back. Folks, it is a fundamental freedom, a fundamental right, the ability to be armed. Self-defense, fundamental to what it means to be human, and certainly fundamental to what it means to be an American. And so we on Bullets discuss guns, gun rights, the Second Amendment. Folks, we had a lot of news this week, a lot. One of the things that was really, really big this week from the Rockefeller Institute of Government, just a big study. It covered 50 years of mass shootings. I want you to think about what I'm saying here. 50 years of mass shootings from 1966 to 2016. So from 1966 to 2016, that 50-year period, the study covered mass shootings. Now, for that whole 50 years, they found only 340 mass shootings for the whole 50 years. Now, I know that's going to shock a lot of you because in 2015, all the leftists were saying we had 355 in that 1 year. And, of course, we've been saying at Breitbart forever that they're blowing this all out of proportion, swelling the numbers beyond all justification. So we had 340 mass shootings from 1966 to 2016. Out of those 340, the weapon of choice 75% of the time was a what? That's right, a handgun. Now, I know that's a shock to people like Chris Murphy and Nancy Pelosi and all the rest of them, Dianne Feinstein, who
it's the assault weapon is a weapon of choice. It's the assault weapon. If we could get rid of that, we wouldn't even have a mass shooting no more.
Sorry about your luck. All right, if you look at the numbers, Rockefeller Institute of Government put them up. A handgun was used 75% of the time. A quote-unquote assault rifle was used 28% of the time. And a shotgun was used 17% of the time. Now, those of you who are good at math, it doesn't take you long to figure out 75 plus 28 plus 17 exceeds 100. So you're wondering how that percentage works. And the deal is this. At times, an attacker used two guns. And that's why the numbers exceed 100 when added. But the lesson is clear. A handgun is used 3 times more often than a quote-unquote assault rifle. So when these people tell you, if we could just ban assault weapons, boy, would we ever be safe? You know that's not true. Number one, had they banned assault weapons, the Santa Fe school attack May 18th would have still occurred because he used a revolver and a shotgun. Number two, even without that attack, all you have to do is look at California, which has an assault weapons ban, and they have a high-profile shooting once or twice a year that catches the nation's attention. So these laws only impact law-abiding citizens. That's all they do. They make it harder for law-abiding citizens to get the weapons they need to defend themselves. It's just that simple. And I know someone will go, well, I don't know if a law-abiding citizen got to be having an assault weapon to defend himself or herself. Here's the deal. It's law upon law upon law upon law. It's the assault weapons ban and universal background checks and the waiting period and the requirements for concealed carry and the ban on this and the ban on that and the prohibition on that and the delay on that and the hoop you have to jump through for that. As they keep stacking these laws, it becomes nearly impossible for the law-abiding citizen to get the tools they need for self-defense. And look, California is the perfect example. We covered this week at Breitbart. Now listen to what I'm going to say. This is no exaggeration. Listen to this. California has an assault weapons ban. They have universal background checks. They have a 10-day waiting period on gun purchases, all right? They have gun violence restraining orders. They have a good cause requirement for concealed carry permit issuance. They require residents to get a certificate from the state government, a firearm safety certificate, before they're even allowed to buy a gun for their home for self-defense. That has nothing to do with carrying one. They have a ban on campus carry. They have a ban on teachers K through 12 being able to have a gun to shoot back with in case they're under attack. On and on and on I can go. And what do they want to do now? They want to add a across-the-board limit on gun purchases so that you can only purchase one gun a month, period, be it a long gun or a handgun, one gun a month. They want to also raise the minimum age for long gun purchases to 21, meaning if you are 18 to 20 years old, your constitutional right to keep and bear arms will be infringed until you're age 21. They also want to expand the gun violence restraining orders so that people at school could file a complaint against you and your guns could be confiscated. And these guns are confiscated without the gun owner knowing about it. Don't forget that. The gun owner knows the confiscation is happening when the police come through the door. That's it. That's how these things work. Also, another senator wants to expand the gun violence restraining orders in California so that the orders not only allow the confiscation of guns, but the confiscation of gun parts. Folks, it just keeps going. It's incremental. It's insidious. That's why you have to fight these laws. You have to fight them tooth and nail. California already has the most stringent gun controls in our country, and as I've already said, once or twice a year, they have a mass shooting that just captures the nation's attention. And not minor shootings, big incidents, all right? And so these gun controls don't work. They don't work because all they do is restrain the law-abiding, and after they hit a certain level, as they've done in California, they put the law-abiding at a mighty disadvantage, okay? You want to talk about gun control fail? Let me do this real quick. Look at London and Australia. You know, it was in London. London is where Liam Neeson, the gun-toting action star of Taken and other movies, Liam Neeson praised Great Britain's handgun ban. He praised it. And he complained about America's lack of gun control. He did that in 2014. He wants us to be like Great Britain, all right? He's a hypocrite, yes, but I'm just saying, note that. In 2015, during a campaign stop in New Hampshire, Hillary Clinton talked about the Australian confiscatory model and said that it would be worth trying here in the United States. And I know a lot of people say, she didn't really say that. Dude, we have her on video at Breitbart. Look it up. All right? We don't make stuff up. You know, the rule at Breitbart, in my opinion, this is my paraphrase, my summation. If it's true, we report it. That's what we do. We find what's true, we report it. Hillary said it. Period. We've got the video embedded in the piece. So we have praise for London gun controls. We have praise for Australian gun controls. In 2016, gun-toting action star Matt Damon, I'm not real sure his elevator goes all the way to the top, but nonetheless, Matt Damon was in Australia for the premiere of his movie Jason Bourne, and he praised Australia's gun control. Y'all did it with one fell swoop, he said, and how he wished America could do the same thing. Golly, I wish America could do the same thing. All right? So, you know, you go, wow, these gun controls in Australia and London, they must be special. These are special gun controls because Damon and Neeson love them. And look at the screech owl. Hillary even loves them. They must be special. Then what do we find out? May 11th, 2018, a mass shooting in Australia. I know CNN didn't spend a lot of time on it. I'm not sure MSNBC even mentioned it. 7 people killed, 4 of them kids between the ages of 8 and 13. A mass shooting in Australia. In London, on May 31st, 2018, a machine gun attack. Let me say it again, real slow for those of you who are liberals. Machine gun attack in London. Now you add this to the stabbings. Listen, they have so many stabbings in London that they have moved to knife control now. So they're adding knife control to gun control. All right. Now listen, they have so many stabbings that by April they had surpassed New York City for number of crimes in their city. Number of murders in their city. Folks, gun control isn't working. What it does is it means a mother or an aunt or a grandmother walking down the sidewalk in London lacks the ability to defend themselves. I'm just going to throw out a town. You go to a street in Amarillo, Texas. Go to a street in Fort Worth, Texas, and you walk up on a grandma or a mother or a single woman who's 21 or up, and you try to do something, there is a tremendous chance that you're going to catch a 9mm slug either in your chest or your forehead, right? You come up to stab, attack with a hammer, hit with a shovel, whatever it is. The odds are when the police get there, they're going to zip you up in a yellow bag, ball game, all right? But see, they don't have that option in London. In London, now rudimentary weapons are king. The man with a knife is king because no one has a gun. See, the left never tells you that part of it. They're like, oh, we're going to make our streets safer. We're going to take guns off our streets. What they don't understand, guns on our streets aren't the problem. Never have been. The problem is criminals on our streets. Criminals on our streets. That's the problem. And London illustrates that again. Without guns, these criminals now are just using knives. And they're preying on people who are defenseless. Again, Fort Worth, Texas, Amarillo, Texas. I'm going to say Scottsdale, Arizona. I'm going to say Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. I'm going to say Louisville, Kentucky. You walk up on somebody in one of those cities and try to stab them. Let me know how it works out. If you live through it, I'd like to know if you saw the flash of the barrel before the bullet hit you. See, it's a completely different scenario. And once you deny people the ability to defend themselves, what you're doing, you can say all you want, you're doing it to reduce crime and do this, but your laws will only disarm the innocent, and that makes them more vulnerable. Folks, we had a lot of hypocrisy this week. Arne Duncan, who was Obama's education secretary, we wrote on him this week. See, you'll remember week before last, Arne Duncan came out, he's a braggadocious, arrogant human. He came out and he's like, you know what? If we'll do it in large scale, if we'll do it to scale, meaning if everybody will participate, then I'd be interested too in participating in a school boycott until Congress passes more gun control. I'll take part. My family will take part. And he knows what will happen. It'll never happen to scale, so he'll never have to follow up on that. It's just a bunch of arrogant talk, just a bunch of blah, 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 blah. And then what do we find out this week? What do we find out about Arne Duncan? After all this gun control talk, gun control for the commoners, of course, his kids go to a school in Chicago where they not only have armed security, but when the kids are walking across campus, if they're not comfortable, they can call and the police will walk with them. They're not comfortable. The police will walk with them. Folks, this is hypocrisy at its highest. That should make your blood boil. It really should. I'll tell you a story. I will tell you a story. After Sandy Hook and Obama's hesitance to allow teachers to be armed in school after that, and there's actually no excuse for it. No excuse for it. After that example, anybody can see we've got to let teachers be armed, those who want to be. Not forcing them, but those who want to be. Obama came out against that. All right? Now, the arrogance of it all is that his kids all the while are going to a school in D.C. where they have armed protection. Not only that, they're being escorted to school by armed protection. I remember writing that piece and word getting back to us that I needed to take it down because there weren't armed people at that school, and I had made a claim that could not be backed up. I remember that. And then when Obama and Michelle were leaving office, finally, when they were leaving office, Michelle was asked to look back over their years at the White House and tell people some memories that stuck out. And one of her memories was of her daughters climbing in trucks with armed men to go to school every day. See the arrogance of these people? You call them out, you catch them. And instead of righting the wrong by going, you know what? They could easily go, you know what? You're right, and I hadn't thought of it. It's not fair for my kids to have protection and yours don't. Let's arm teachers. Instead of doing that, they claim I made it up. I don't have my sources right. Well, guess what? I had everything right. And it was hypocrisy. With the Obamas, just like it's hypocrisy right now with Arnie Duncan. And it should make your blood boil. And what it should make you do is contact your reps and contact your senators and demand that they formulate and pass some type of legislation that begins to clear the way for teachers to get armed. The Gun-Free School Zones Act of 1991 has got to go. It has got to go. The Gun-Free School Zones Act of 1991 is a scourge on this earth. Representative Thomas Massey has been all over it. And Thomas Massey is District 4, Kentucky. He's a great pro-gun congressman. He's been all over that, trying to get rid of that Gun-Free School Zones Act. We should be rallying behind him. We should be rallying behind him. Contact your reps, contact your senators, get rid of it. I'm not saying the office of president isn't a special office. Only 45 people in the history of the world have held it. It's a special office, about as special as it gets. But human life is human life. If a set of kids in D.C. get armed protection, then I don't understand why that same protection, or at least armed protection on a different level. I know everybody can't have Secret Service protection. I understand that. But why is it that your kids and your neighbor's kids can't at least have a social studies teacher who's capable of shooting back? Why can't that teacher be armed? See, it's duplicitous. It's hypocrisy, because what it ultimately says is some lives are worth protecting and some lives, are disposable. And I just don't buy into that. I don't. Make fun of me, call me ignorant, whatever you want, doesn't matter to me. I don't buy into it. Now, I'm going to tell you someone else who wouldn't buy into it, and I'm proud of him, and I try to say I'm proud of him every chance I get, Texas Governor Greg Abbott. You'll recall, after the May 18th Santa Fe shooting, Texas Governor Greg Abbott said he was going to hold a roundtable discussion about what could be done going forward for school safety, school security. And some people were nervous, and I got to admit I was a little nervous because he almost sounded like he was willing to hear some gun control arguments. I was a little nervous. Now, that goes against the grain of him, though. It goes against his very essence, but I was just a little nervous. Well, he proved me wrong. He released his report after his roundtable, and what's he doing? He says, look, we need more good guys with guns. He wants a greater law enforcement presence in the schools. And here's a genius idea. He wants schools to provide office room so that police, when they have a break, lunch break, or they're doing paperwork or whatever, they can go to the school and do it there. And it's just going to increase police traffic through that school throughout the day. It's going to increase police presence. It is a genius idea. Now, guess what? It gets better. He also wants to use veterans. He stressed how veterans are highly trained in firearms. Why can't these veterans be used to patrol schools? That is genius. That is genius. So this is what Greg Abbott is doing. Good guys with guns to protect the kids in Texas, to try to be sure a Santa Fe type attack doesn't happen again. Kudos to Greg Abbott. Kudos. Also, he talks about, on an education front, not just for students and teachers, but everybody, employing the National Shooting Sports Foundation's Project Child Safe. What Project Child Safe is a campaign whereby NSSF, which is the National Shooting Sports Foundation, NSSF has given out 37 million firearm safety kits. 37 million. These contain a firearm lock, a brochure on firearm safety, and a brochure on how to use the lock, proper storage and such. Folks, we don't need laws mandating these things. We just need to use our brains. We need to keep our guns where little hands can't get to them. I don't need a government to tell me that. Common sense tells me that. And what NSSF puts out in its package is not only a means whereby you could lock a gun, but an understanding of how best to use that lock, of where best to keep that gun in case you don't have a safe or whatever, and those kinds of things. And also some basic firearm safety tips. These kinds of things, this well-rounded approach is Greg Abbott's approach. And this, my friends, would lead to greater school safety. And this, my friends, would cut the number of school shootings. It surely would. Look, when the attackers know that there's a good chance the social studies teacher is going to shoot first, they're not going to go in the social studies class. And I know the left will immediately respond to that point by going, well, I'll tell you what, there's a better chance that he's going to take her gun away and use it against her. That's BS. That's BS. And anyone who makes that argument with you, you should shame them in front of people. I would, if anyone makes that argument with you, if you're talking to friends, family, whoever it is, about arming teachers, and some leftist in your circle of friends or your family or your workplace says, well, I think what they'll just do is take her gun away and use it against her. Say, okay, where'd you get that? To stress. Say, I'm citing my sources as I talk to you. Where did you get that information that women have their guns taken away and using against them? Call them out. Make them defend it. And it won't take long till they either get mad or embarrassed. And by getting mad, that just means they got embarrassed first and you didn't see it. And then they got mad just to shut down the argument. But it will end the argument because they can't defend that statement. That's just a statement they make, hoping you won't be able to answer it, and it will stop you from pressing them. Don't take it. Don't stop. This is life and death, folks. This refusal to arm teachers is life and death. And you say, well, it's not for me. I'm not a teacher. Yeah, well, care about the teachers whether you're a teacher or not. Care about the innocents whether you're there or not. It's ridiculous that we leave them unguarded. Folks, last point in this first segment, Whataburger. Now listen, I like Whataburger food. I really like that chicken strip sandwich with the honey barbecue sauce on it and a sweet tea. I really do. But I want to say this. Whataburger's policies, they are beyond screwed up. When they claim that their policies are pro-gun, they're not telling the whole truth. I could walk in Whataburger with my Kimber K6S, which I'm wearing right now, by the way, in my Galco holster. I could walk in, and as long as my T-shirt covers that gun, I'm fine. And Whataburger's fine with it. But if I walk in and my T-shirt for some reason blew up in the parking lot and I didn't realize it, and my gun is visible, they won't serve me. Matter of fact, they will ask me to leave the restaurant. Yet they will say they are pro-gun. Really? See, what it is Whataburger allows concealed carry, but they won't allow open carry of handguns. All right? Now listen. You go, I don't understand why you're stressing this. Here's why I'm stressing this. Because on May 31st, a detective from the Friendswood Police Department in Texas went into a Whataburger. He's got his gun on his hip. It's in plain view. He's got his badge on his hip. It's in plain view. The manager refused to serve him. Did you hear me? The manager refused to serve him. You don't get in this situation unless you have some ignorant policy against guns to begin with. And Whataburger has that policy, that ignorant policy against open carry of firearms in their stores. So if my handgun can't be seen, Whataburger doesn't care if I sit in there and eat 6 sandwiches and drink 5 sweet teas. They don't care. But if the wind blows and the handle of my pistol's hanging out, then they're going to ask me to leave the store and they're going to refuse to serve me. That detective left on May 31st without being served. Whataburger released an apology the next day. But see, what they need to do is look at themselves and go, you know what? Our anti-gun policy got us in this situation. Our anti-open carry policy is what caused this mess. We're going to have to revamp it. That's the right response. Sadly, it's just not the response that Whataburger is making. You're listening to Bullets with AWR Hawkins. We'll be back right after this.
Breitbart News Daily with Alex Marlow.
Why did we see some of the Republican kissing of Mark Zuckerberg that was taking place?
I called it kissing the ring because I felt like every single person practically had to kiss the ring of this guy, who wants to do nothing except get all those people out of office. So, bizarre behavior from the Republicans.
Breitbart News Daily, weekdays at 6 a.m. Eastern on Sirius XM Patriot 125.
This is Bullets with AWR Hawkins, a Breitbart.com podcast. Here once again is AWR Hawkins.
Welcome back to Bullets with AWR Hawkins. Folks, listen. Leftists leave office, but they don't quit pushing their agenda. This is what you got to understand. See, something that the Democrats have always had over the Republicans until recently is that Democrats understand politics is power. Let me say it again. Politics is power. When they run for office with the goal of instituting an agenda. A leftist agenda, but an agenda. Politics is power. For some reason, the Republicans have never learned this lesson. I'm going to back up. I believe President Trump knows it. I believe he understands it. Kudos to him. But Republicans in the Senate and the House, they're clueless. Now, there are exceptions. There are exceptions. But by and large, the majority is clueless. Speaker Ryan, a joke. Mitch McConnell, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, no idea. See, to them, stopping a liberal bill every now and then is a success. That's not a success. No. A success is what Trump has been doing, instituting your agenda day after day after day. If you look at what Speaker Ryan has done for guns during his speakership, what's he done? Apart from the repeal of the Social Security gun ban, what's he done? He pulled the Hearing Protection Act before it could even be voted on because the liberals were so upset, especially that screech owl Hillary Clinton. So he's actually done more for the left than the right. Right? Now, if he had been a liberal, like remember when, forget the House, go to the Senate. Do you remember when Harry Reid was the Senate Majority Leader? The reason he riled the right up so bad is he was relentless in the pursuit of his agenda. His agenda was sickening. It was sickening, but guess what? He knew why he was in office to institute it. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is clueless. Speaker Paul Ryan, clueless. So this has always been the Democrats' advantage. Now, what's happened now is the Democrats have fallen on hard times inasmuch as people like Nancy Pelosi, Sheila Lee Jackson, I'd say even Chuck Schumer, Senator Dianne Feinstein, others, they're not what you would call mental heavyweights. And some of them are getting worse by the day. So their ability to use their politics for power is diminished greatly. This has helped Republicans. On the Republican side, we still lack good leadership. But at least we're being helped right now by the fact that the Democrats are stumbling, fumbling, tumbling. But never forget that a good liberal, a good progressive, will never quit pursuing his or her agenda. They understand politics or power. Barack Obama is a perfect picture of this. What do we know about Barack Obama? We know that while he was in office, he oversaw Fast and Furious, and by that I mean his administration, Fast and Furious, which was a gun running scheme that involved sneaking guns across an international border. Not a couple, but over 2,000 firearms. Buying them via straw purchases. The left complains all the time about straw purchases. Bought these guns via straw purchases, then snuck them across an international border from the United States into Mexico. Right? Some of those guns were used to kill Americans, and U.S. Border Patrol guard Brian Terry was killed with one of these guns. This is an operation overseen by the Obama administration. What else do we know about him? We know that in the latter months of his administration, his FBI spied on Donald Trump. We know that. His FBI decided they were not going to charge Hillary. They decided that before they ever looked at the evidence or announced they were not going to charge Hillary. We know that. On and on I can go. We know that what little legacy he left has been undone in a year and a half, has been completely undone by Donald Trump. That's a fact. We know that. And despite all of this, Barack Obama is still pushing his liberal agenda. This is what I'm saying. Liberals do not give up. They understand politics is power. And on June 1st, Barack Obama tweeted, he tweeted this. This National Gun Violence Awareness Day, and June 1st was such a day. This National Gun Violence Awareness Day, show your commitment to keeping our kids safe from gun violence. Then, for everyone we've lost, take action to change our leadership and our laws until they reflect that commitment, no matter how long it takes. Folks, that tweet should be studied in political science classes. It really should. It speaks to the commitment of the left. Notice how he ended it, no matter how long it takes. He had to put that on because they don't have a prayer getting gun control right now. They don't have a prayer, all right? But he doesn't want them to give up because of that. Politics is power. Maybe it's a long game, not a short game, but he wants them to stay in it. Again, this is that understanding that I wish Republicans had, all right? And notice the way they talk, these progressives. See, he says, show your commitment to keeping our kids safe from gun violence. Now, name one law that would have kept kids safe at Santa Fe High School in Texas. I'm going to wait. Go ahead and name it. See, there's not one, is there? Now, the left will say, universal background checks. And most of them don't even know what universal background checks are. But those wouldn't have done anything because the gunman was 17. He was too young to buy a firearm. He used firearms that his daddy owned. He used his daddy's firearms. Someone will say, well, then ban assault weapons and them high-capacity magazines. Well, he didn't use firearms that use high-capacity magazines. And he didn't use assault weapons. He used a revolver and a shotgun. So some tireless liberal who is as dumb as the day is long but has memorized all their talking points, they'll go, well, then put in place waiting periods on firearm purchases. Again, the kid was 17. He's too young to own a gun. He's too young to buy a gun. Your waiting periods don't do squat. Well, then put in place gun violence protection orders. The kid is 17. He doesn't have a firearm in his name. He doesn't own a gun. See, I could keep going, folks. There's not a law that could have stopped that attack. Just like there's not a law that could have stopped the Sandy Hook attack. That attacker, a 20-year-old, that attacker stole his mother's firearms. And the media never covers this, because they want to always keep under wraps the fact that he stole them. But he stole those guns, and then he shot his mother dead before he went to the school where he shot them dead. You'll notice the media is always going, 26 people killed in Sandy Hook. There were actually 27 killed in the attack if you look at the whole day, because he stole his guns, killed his mama at the house, then went to the school and killed 26. But again, what the left wants to do is they don't want to come right out and say he didn't steal them, because that would be a bald lie and they would get called immediately. So they just want to not report the fact that he stole them. And so in order to keep from mentioning that, they never mention that he killed his mom. But you see, again, it's part of the left. It's relentless. But my point is this. No law would have stopped the Sandy Hook attacker. No law. Unless you consider a law allowing teachers to be armed the kind of law we need, and then guess what? That law would have stopped him. That law would have stopped him in his tracks. when they saw him shooting through the glass in the front to gain access, how great would it have been if a principal and a teacher, or a principal and another staff member, from a point of cover, had been able to rise up over the countertop or the desk just high enough to put 7 or 8 rounds, focused rounds on him, and drop him. That's how these stories should end. That's how these stories could end, if we would get away from these silly gun control pushes and free up people to exercise their Second Amendment rights. But my point is this: Barack Obama is relentless because he's a true leftist. He's a true leftist, and politics is power. Folks, we have to think that way. We really do. See, I would normally say we have nothing to learn from leftists, and that's because I despise them. I despise the way they hate freedom. But we got to be honest. We do have this to learn from them: that we don't just run for office to win. We run for office to accomplish our agenda. Trump's proven that. That's why he stands out right now. That's why a year and a half into his presidency, he stands out head and shoulders above presidents that preceded him. The amount of things he's been able to do is unbelievable. And if he had leadership in the House and Senate as dedicated to accomplishing things as he is, where we would be right now would be absolutely unbelievable. Folks, I'm just going to mention this real quick. David Hogg. I'm embarrassed by David Hogg. I think everybody but his parents are, and I've never talked to his parents. For all I know, they're embarrassed too. But David Hogg has really gone a lot further than you thought he was going to go. And by that I mean he has really exceeded what people kind of thought he was going to do. I don't mean this in a good way. David Hogg pops out of the Parkland school shooting, and he's all of a sudden a gun control activist. And he flies around the country, and people set up talks for him, and he's arrogant, and he gets on people's nerves, and, he boycotts the NRA. He holds the boycott of Publix, which we covered last week, which backfires on him. And that's because he's being driven by his arrogance. So then what he does in one of his more arrogant moments is he puts out a tweet where he says this, all right? He says, "Remember a time when there wasn't a school shooting every week? I don't, because I wasn't alive." Now, number one, there's not a school shooting every week. And we've discussed that here. We've refuted that so many times I'm not even going to address it again. But number two, this statement, "Remember when there wasn't a school shooting every week? I don't, because I wasn't alive." This shows that he speaks from such limited life experience and limited knowledge that he really is not in a position to speak. He was answered quite well by an Army Ranger who survived Benghazi. The Army Ranger retweeted David Hogg's tweet, but he changed David Hogg's face in the tweet so that David Hogg is wearing one of those vagina hats like Ashley Judd wore when she said, "I'm a nasty woman." I agree with you, by the way, Ashley. You are nasty. Anyway, David Hogg is answered by Chris Peranto, all right? And he says this, "I remember it was before your generation started shooting up the schools, David, even though we still had guns. Thank you for confirming again that it's not the gun, it's the person, and in particular, you and your peers' millennial culture." Folks, that's just genius. That's just genius. Here you have a man. Peranto was an Army Ranger. He was ready 5 minutes into the Benghazi attack. He was ready to go save lives. And he was told, he has said it very clearly, he was told to wait. And eventually he just went on. And they did save lives. This is a man. This is not someone like David Hogg, all right? So Hogg says, "Remember a time when there wasn't a school shooting every week? I don't, because I wasn't alive." Peranto says, "I remember. It was before your generation started shooting up the schools, David, even though we still had guns. Thank you for confirming again that it's not the gun, it's the person, and in particular, you and your peers' millennial culture." You know, Columbine was in 1999. I believe Columbine was April 20th, 1999, all right? So that falls well within what Peranto's pointing out. A 19-year-old right now was born the year that Columbine took place, all right? And so it's been the millennial generation, not only that has witnessed this mad rise in school shootings, but to be honest with you, that has taken part in them. And that's Parento's point. You know, if you look at the Parkland shooter, the Parkland shooter said, my life is meaningless. He said this hours before carrying out the shooting in a video he left behind. He said his life means nothing. His life is meaningless. That's kind of a millennial outlook. And if you think that way, then you really have nothing to lose. You do what you want. And that's what these heathens do. Parento's exactly right. We've had guns, folks, not since 1791, which is when the Second Amendment was ratified, but even before 1791, long before, we've had guns. It's been part of American heritage. Before that, it was part of colonial heritage. We didn't shoot up schools, public buildings, and such. It has been something witnessed and done by the millennial culture in a large part. The problem is that culture. That can be corrected, but the problem is so many people are arrogant, like David Hogg. David Hogg is not a teachable human. David Hogg listens to one person. Who's that? David Hogg. Folks, you're listening to Bullets with AWR Hawkins. We'll be back right after this.
Breitbart News Tonight with Joel Pollack and Rebecca Mansour.
The real thing that the left is angry about is they're like, how could you allow these Russian memes? Somebody saw a meme and then they decided they had to vote for Trump. Or it must have been fake news. And by fake news, they mean conservative websites. Come on. But this is what the left thinks. Fake news. And by fake news, what they mean is shut down Breitbart.
Breitbart News Tonight. Weeknights starting at 9 p.m. East on Sirius XM Patriot 125.
This is Bullets with AWR Hawkins, a Breitbart.com podcast. Here once again is AWR Hawkins.
Welcome back to Bullets with AWR Hawkins. Folks, I want to end this podcast by telling you a story out of Worcester, Massachusetts. A store clerk had a guy come in and demand money, and to make his point, he pulled a knife and held it at the throat of a female customer. Held her hostage with a large knife. That's what police said. The clerk, instead of handing over money, pulled a gun and opened fire. He shot the individual with the knife 3 times. So the guy demands money. He gets bullets instead. Folks, I love to say it. This story is brought to you by the Second Amendment. When the left talks about gun control, it's just going to make you safer. It's just common sense. When they do those things, when they say those things, what they ultimately would do is put this store clerk in a position where he could not have saved that woman's life, and he could not have defended his own life. So always remember that. These real stories that are brought to you by the Second Amendment, these are the kinds of stories that would go away if the left got their gun control. And you say, well, I don't know if that's fair to say. Look at California. Look how hard it is to get a concealed carry permit in California. How hard it is to have a gun on your person in California. Nearly impossible. That's what the left ultimately wants nationwide. Folks, you're listening to Bullets with AWR Hawkins. I'm glad you've been with me this week. Get your friends, your family members, your neighbors, your coworkers to tune in, to subscribe. You can go to iTunes and subscribe. If you have an Android, you can subscribe to the podcast as well. After they subscribe, ask them to give us some reviews. We need all the 5-star reviews we can get. And until we're together again next week, always remember, more guns equal more freedom.
Sonny's Corner with Sonny Johnson.
Everything in hip-hop is not bad. Kanye agreed with us, so let's love him today until he raps tomorrow and you turn your back. Because if you jump off when the fun of the moment is over, then you are in fact making Kanye the token he is accused of being. So please, don't do that. Don't go there.
Sonny's Corner with Sonny Johnson. Saturday from 1 to 3 p.m. East on Sirius XM Patriot 125.